Pittsburgh Steeler fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, senior editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, and boy, it's rough and rowdy in the room tonight, folks. If you could have been a part of the pre-show discussion, between the other two guys on this show, well, I don't know if they were in the same room, might have been to blows. But anyways, let's bring those two individuals weighing in, and I'm not going to guess. Bryan Anthony Davis, podcasters. What's up, Bryan?
Dave eats dirt. That's all I'm going to say.
And in the other corner, weighing in, and I'm not going to guess, Dave Schofield, the editor of Behind the Steel Curtain. What's up, Dave?
Hey, if someone else thinks that they can understand numbers better than me, they can try.
I don't even try. That's why I just sat there and laughed and said, okay, let's get the show on the road. All right. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 1-0. We talked about that ad nauseum this week. It's now time to start to turn our attention to the Las Vegas Raiders coming to Pittsburgh at Heinz Field in week 2. It's before we get started, I want to get your all's just overall gist of this game. There's the fans that are like Michael Beck. Michael Beck has been saying, he said it in his live mic podcast on Tuesday. He reiterated that to me on Let's Ride again when he was on with me at Let's Ride on Friday, which will debut on our audio side. He thinks this game is going to be a laugher. He thinks it's going to be a blowout. Double-digit lead win for the Steelers. How do you all think this game is going to play out? I don't want predictions right now, but I'm just thinking, like, how are you feeling about this game as we sit here on Thursday night? Bryan, we'll start with you.
I feel that this is a very dangerous game. And the reason I'm saying that is because the Raiders could come in with a very bad team. We've seen it in 2009 with Bruce Gradkowski. We saw it in 2018 when everything broke down and everything went wrong. Josh Dobbs was in there, the broken X-ray machine.
X-ray machine game.
Yeah, Chris Boswell falling down. I mean,
and where did I see that game? Sitting next to Bryan Anthony Davis
at my house. And you know what?
I'm not invited anymore after tonight.
Oh, no, you're always saying we're allowed to fight. I'm allowed to tell you when you're being a poopy head. But you know it's dangerous. Now I remember week 2 in 2002. Bryan Anthony Davis did not know that he was sitting among greatness when he was there because Tony Defeo was in the house too, and the Steelers were supposed to roll in that game, and the Raiders, silly things happened in that game too. It always seems like silly things happen. Then Lynn Swann blew me off in the concourse, and I swore I would never vote for him again. And I didn't, so I cursed him in the 2004 election. But with that being said, this is a team that just played the Baltimore Ravens, and we were rooting hard for this team the other night. And they had no business winning that game 2 or 3 times. They screwed up, and they kept on getting second chances in that game. I stayed up for the entire thing. And when you come away with a victory like that, one of 2 things happen. One, you get cocky, or 2, you're like, wait a second, we can do this. And it's not the cockiness, it's the fact that you're out there and you realize, you get that mojo, and you feel like you're going to be able to do so much more. They have some stars on that team that I think that are really tough, one on defense, one on offense, and you cannot overlook this team. So don't get cocky, Steelers, after that week 1 win when you were not exactly stellar.
Okay, so you fall into my camp. Dave, are you in the Jeff Hartman, be careful in this game, or are you in the Michael Beck, this game's going to be pretty easy?
I am definitely more in the Jeff Hartman camp. I guess the best way to say it is I probably had more confidence in the Steelers with this game before last week, if you know what I mean, because now it almost seems like the expectations are so much more, and it doesn't mean that the Steelers can't do it, because I'm going to say it all the time. I feel the Steelers can absolutely win every game, but I also see where they could absolutely lose it as well. When you look at it game by game, there's a reason you can see it as you go. And sorry, love Michael Beck, but if you remember last year, he was convinced there was no way the Steelers could come up anywhere short of the AFC Championship game. And we all know how that played out. That's what happens when you're so certain that a team is going to do well. But it doesn't matter how certain we are. What we don't want is the Steelers feeling that way.
Yeah, I mean, this team, and really, not every team can say they can win every single game they play. The Steelers, I believe, are in that category. Every team can lose every game as well.
Yeah.
When you turn the ball over and stuff. And we'll get to that. We're going to get to that. What I want to talk about today, though, in this podcast, at least for the first half, is think back to last week. Who are some players that did not play, let's just say, up to your standard and need to improve their game in some way, shape, or form? Now, this is completely subjective. You can pick whoever you like, and you can give your own justification. That's your list. It doesn't matter. So Dave always poo-poos me going to Bryan first. I'm going to go to Dave first, so we make it equity is important. Dave, give me a player that you feel like needs to play better this Sunday at Heinz Field.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna give a Dave answer. I'm just gonna kind of change up how I'm looking at it, because you guys know I'm a numbers guy. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that this player, yeah, who would have thought? I'm not saying that this player didn't play well, but I would like to see, based on opportunity and everything else, I would like to see more numbers from Najee Harris. I would like to see, more yards, more. We're not going to see any more, a greater number in percentage of offensive snaps, because you can't top that one, because he was out there every snap. But I'm just saying, even overall yards, like, make those connections on those short passes to where he can get some yards in the passing game as well. I'm not saying that I think that, he didn't do it, he didn't step up enough. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I'd just like to see more of a numbers production based on the offensive game plan.
Yeah, for sure. I could see that.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Bryan, what do you think? Who's a player that you want to see do a little bit better this Sunday?
Well, there's definitely a few of them. One of them that comes to mind, and this is going to follow along in where Dave was going with this. This guy had a good game this week, but I want him to have a superstar game. I want him to have a takeover game, and that's Chase Claypool. And we kind of saw that in week 2 last year. Last year in week 2, and where he just really came alive. Chase made that amazing catch. He had a really nice run, but I'm kind of looking at him as being a focal point and kind of branching into that WR1 type role, even though you don't need that with these guys, with this stable. You don't need all 4 of them to be superstars, but every single week you need to have that one guy that stands out as receivers more and more. Last week it was Deontay Johnson. It's not going to be Deontay Johnson for 17 games. That's what a true WR1 does. But this week, I really want it to be Chase Claypool, and I think that they have some very good matchup opportunities against that Raiders secondary. So I'd like him to have a better week, not because he had a bad week, but to be more of a focal point and be more of a standout.
I like that explanation. I had Claypool on my list, and I scratched him off last second because I was like, yeah, he had a pretty good game. I'm going to go with my first player on the list is a guy that's going to connect both of yours, and that's BTR, Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger. Ben has to play better. And there's people that are Ben apologists, and I'm a big Ben Roethlisberger fan, but I'm also going to be the guy that says he can play better. And he had 3 weeks off. That's still kind of hard to fathom. And I think the second half, let's see the trajectory. The arrow is pointing up, as Mike Tomlin would say, for the offense and Ben Roethlisberger. Let's see if they can pick that up. I want to see him connect with Najee Harris on those short passes. Give him good, accurate passes to catch. And with Claypool, my goodness, Ben said it in his press availability this week. It's either you catch the ball, it's a defensive pass interference, or, my gosh, so many good things can happen when Claypool gets deep. He's a beast of a guy, but Ben has to play better. He's got to deliver the ball more accurately. I want to see him play better because we know he can play better. Let's go to Dave. Who else do you have on your list, Dave?
You said, notice we all went offense.
Well, you have to. I have some defenders. I have a defender on my list.
Exactly. Oh, I didn't know we were going around again. So, okay.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh, you're ready to go? Then I'll just say, do I have to go by name, or can I just say the entire offensive line?
You can say I had the O-line on my list. Is there anyone in particular?
I'm going to say, well, first of all, you're going to think I'm crazy. I'm actually going to say Kevin Dotson. Only Bryan agrees with me.
Yes.
Not because of how he played, but because of our level of expectation for him.
What was his grade for PFF, Dave? Do you know?
He had the lowest on the offensive line.
Really?
Dotson was the lowest rated offensive lineman for the Steelers.
Really?
Yes. And that,
I didn't
like
know
I said,
that. I
I
didn't get to
kind
your
of
article
tore
this
into the
week.
PFF grades. Like I want to say this to the people of the podcast. I got to make sure people understand this on the articles. Just because I report the PFF grades doesn't mean that I agree with them. And I spent a long time in these articles this week. I even put a clip in from Jeffrey Benedict because I was so upset that they gave Ray a bad grade. He played 3 snaps, and one of them he had to block a defensive end and did a great job for wide receiver. And they gave him a failing grade on that play. Because you can't play 3 plays and have a because they started with grades of 60. That's where everyone starts. If you got a grade of 60, it means you didn't do anything great, didn't do anything terrible. If you get a grade lower than 60, that means you did stuff that you didn't do right. So that kind of drove me nuts with that one. But there was plenty of others like Ben's. I mean, Ben wasn't good, but Ben wasn't worse than Aaron Rodgers. Minkah Fitzpatrick, they obviously had no clue what they were asking Minkah to do in that game. That's the problem with sometimes with the grades. But I actually put a little bit more faith in the offensive line and defensive line with these grades more than other places. Not that they're perfect, but just because they're a little bit easier to grade. And Kevin Dotson, we have a really high standard for him right now, and especially through the preseason. And he didn't stand out as the player on the O-line last week. Dan Moore Jr. actually had the highest grade. So, followed by Trey Turner. Trey Turner turned it around compared to what he did in the preseason, in my opinion. There was some plays where he was pancaking. I mean, Kendrick Green, he had moments both ways. That was his biggest thing. He had some great blocks, and he had some times where he struggled. So it's not, I think, with the exception maybe at right tackle, which I don't want to get into too much, we've seen the potential of what these guys can all do. It's just putting it together all together on more plays. You know what I'm saying? That and I think they'll grow as the season goes on based on some of the really good things you can see at times with most of them.
I like it. I had offensive line on mine. Bryan, you can either add to what Dave said if you wanted to call out a specific player, feel free, or do you have someone else?
I was actually going with Kevin Dotson or a Trey Turner on that, but this is my question for Dave, and because I have great respect for Dave when it comes to offensive line. And well, actually,
that's the only place he has respect for you, Dave. The only place.
No.
Even though I wanted to fight him 20 minutes.
And then
I love him.
Eating contests. I think he has some respect for me there.
I'm a Mrs. Fields and Big Mac, Mrs. Fields champion on Big Mac.
Anyways, back to the
Dave. I want to ask you about the eye test with the offensive line.
Okay.
If Dan Moore Jr. graded out the best and Kevin Dotson graded out the least, if I'm talking to Dave Schofield about his eye test, who graded out the highest on that?
Eye test. See, it's funny because a lot of people were really high on what Kendrick Green did, but he didn't grade out as well. My eye test tells me that no lineman really stood out above anybody else throughout the game. I thought Dan Moore struggled the most in the first half, and I thought that he stood out the most in a good way in the second half. But I still haven't. I tried to, when I rewind and watch a play over again, I did as much as I could, but I was watching with my dad, so that kind of made it a little bit difficult to do. So I'm still trying to evaluate that. Tomorrow is supposed to be more of my film day, if you know what I mean. So that's the thing I would say is if you broke it into halves, I think the best half of any lineman was Dan Moore's second half from what I saw right away. But I mean, there was times where you don't want the offensive lineman to stand out in a bad way. And there was some times where you saw that, not as much as what you saw Monday night, if you know what I mean. But you also saw some plays where they really stood out for making a real nice block. Some really nice plays from Kendrick Green, some really nice plays even from Trey Turner, some that really stood out. But it's that play in and play out that you want to get all the time. Was that good enough for you?
That was great. That was exactly what I wanted. Now, I do have a player too, but to piggyback on the whole offensive line thing, I would like to just mention real quick that after watching the Ravens game on Monday Night Football, even though I love him as a person, I'm glad Al Villanueva isn't on that line because it seems like there's more of an upside with Dan Moore Jr. right now. So that's just my comment there as far as the offensive line looking up. One more guy that on offense that I want to mention that needs to have a great week, Jeff and Dave. It's Pat Friarmuth. Now, when you saw the injury report today, and there's a hamstring, and he didn't practice, and that being Eric Ebron, you realize how much they need, how beneficial those tight ends can be. And you saw that one big play for Ebron, that one big play for Friarmuth, and then you saw the Raiders and Ravens game again on Monday night and saw what they did with Darren Waller. We'll talk about him probably later as being one of the big threats on their offense. But we've seen how tight ends could just exploit that middle, and how Ben Roethlisberger for years with Heath Miller has been amazing. We've seen how beneficial they are. I could just see in his hometown, first home game, rookie year, them going to Pat Friarmuth a whole lot. And I could see him getting on the board one or two times if they use him correctly. Now, look, did he have a bad game? No. I mean, he had a block that stood out. He had a catch that was amazing, but they weren't using him. So just like we were talking about other guys being used more and being more of a focal point, I want Muth to be that guy, number 88.
He drove Tre'Davious White into the parking lot.
Oh, yeah, he did.
I was going to say, did he ever stop blocking him, or is that block still going on now?
That was the play I saw on Instagram. I was like, damn, Pat, like, that's insane. I mean,
no, it's one thing to block a player
difference.
into your own, deep into your own bench, but to block a player that deep into his bench, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That you're surrounded by the enemy, and you're just
there were several plays during the Buffalo game where you heard audibly whistles going, like refs were blowing whistles, like, you know, trying to stop something. And you never saw it on television. And Ian Eagle was too busy talking about how there are fans in the stands for the 15,000th time. And you never heard what happened. I guarantee you that was one of them. And I guarantee you Kendrick Green and why he got yanked out of the game was another one.
Yeah.
Brian, you were going to say something.
So does that make him Pat Friar Truth?
No.
It's
All
out
right.
there. You can't take it
Value never.
Okay. I'm going to go on the defensive side, and this literally is me just wanting to see more. When the Steelers are willing to trade for someone, they are going to give up something. Most of the time it's draft stock, draft capital, whatever you want to call it. I want to see more from Joe Schobert. I want to recognize him. I want to see him pop off the screen. There's players that we've all seen them, that when they're on the field, the ball's around them, boom, they pop. And for the most part, like Devin Bush, you can see Devin Bush moving around, like he pops. I know Joe Schobert's probably still in that learning curve part of his time with Pittsburgh, but my goodness, I want to see something more. Maybe, I did notice that Devin Bush was the one with the green dot on the back of his helmet in week 1. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, but that maybe Joe Schobert, if they're going to run more base defense, is going to have more opportunities. I just want to see him play to the standard that, okay, the Steelers gave up some draft capital for him, and it was worth it. I know it was a 6th-round pick, but it was still worth it because he's a great player. I do think he's a great player. I know he's actually a great player, but for me, I want to see more from him. That's all I'm going to say. So, Dave, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, because here's what's crazy. You just brought up something really interesting. The Steelers actually have 3 players on their team that they traded for this year. When you think about it. In Joe Schobert, Witherspoon, and Loudermilk. They traded away next year in order to draft him.
Yeah.
And what's funny is Schobert, the only one who had a helmet on Sunday and started and played, they gave up the least amount of capital for, because it was a 6th versus the other ones being 5ths. So when you think of it that way, you're like, Now they're also, paying salary and things like that. When it comes to Joe Schobert, you're right. But at the same time, I would be completely satisfied if he is an Aaron Smith type defender. And that is someone who does a fantastic job at what they need to do, and yet never get recognized because they're not the ones asked to do flashy things.
There's no flash. There's no juice. Yeah. They just go about.
He was never asked to do flashy things. Aaron Smith.
Right.
But I don't know if that's what they're going to do with Schobert or not. But if they do, I hope we can still appreciate him.
Well, and if they're going to ask, their linebackers to cover a Darren Waller, even for any amount of time, like they're going to have to show up in a big way, or else Waller's going to absolutely kill him. Yeah. So anyways, let's continue. Do you have any other players, Dave?
I mean, I could if you wanted me to, but I mean,
You're really not prepared. Do you
no,
have
what I'm saying is they're further down the list. If you want to keep going until we name everybody, we can do it, but that's up to you.
I was just going to go around one more time. Like I have another player, but Brian, do you have another player?
Yes, I do.
Go for it.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
And his name is Chris Wormley. I would love to see a lot more from Chris Wormley.
I didn't even recognize him on the field.
That's the problem. You didn't, but you know he was in there for Tuitt. Now, I know Dave's going to jump in with this, and Dave's going to jump in with this. What we see when you don't see Stephon Tuitt is you see a greater effort from Cam Hayward. And that's a huge deal. It's almost like he puts the defensive line on his shoulders. However, what if you still get a great effort from Cam Hayward and have another amazing effort from Chris Wormley? What Chris Wormley is going to do is also going to help out Alex Highsmith on that right side as well. So I'm really looking for some more from him. I mean, I know he is I really think that he could be a Tyson Alualu.
Yay!
I don't know why that confuses me.
I always know. Oh, I know which one it is, and then I second guess at the last minute.
So, I would love to see him be like that. I actually think that he can be, because when you guys were just talking about Joe Schobert and failed to give me a chance to stick my 2 cents in there, I'll throw it in now. Joe Schobert is your blue collar guy, and I think Chris Wormley could be your blue collar guy. Tyson Alualu has been your blue collar guy. And they're not flashy, but you need those guys. You need those pieces of the puzzle that are going to give the assist. Every Batman needs a Robin, and that's what these guys can be. I mean, we talk about it when we're talking about the defensive backs. Terrell Edmonds is your Robin, and you need those guys. Ryan Clark was a Robin, and then he became a Batman later on. But really, if Chris Wormley could get some more penetration or just gobble up some offensive linemen, that does a whole lot for the success of Alex Highsmith too, which Highsmith got robbed of a sack with one of the 17,000 holds from the Buffalo Bills offensive line. And it was really egregious because he was about to kill Josh Allen on that play.
Yeah, I would not have even thought of listing Wormley, but you make some really good points.
Which is funny because, I said I had other names. I just didn't know how far down you wanted to go, because the really other one that I was going to say was actually Tyson Alualu. He didn't have as strong a game as he had for the Steelers last year. But the thing that's interesting about both Wormley and Alualu, is the Steelers did not play base defense. They didn't have all three of those on the field at the same time, between Hayward, Alualu, I keep doing it, and Wormley. They weren't all three out there at the same time. So it wasn't, it was real interesting how they did that. I don't think that that's going to be the case this week. I think you're going to see some base defense based on the way that the Raiders deploy their personnel.
The next player I have to be the guy that says this next player. Like, it has to be me, because it has to. It's big press. Like, and I'm the one that has to call him out because I was his biggest fan and I wanted Jordan Berry gone. When he shanked the punt, I swear I said to myself, you've got to be freaking kidding me. Like, this is the one thing I hated about Jordan Berry is the shank. And I'll give him a pass because it was his first professional game. It was on the road, all that other bull crap. I don't care. I want consistency from the punting position, whether it's Presley Harvin or someone else. Presley Harvin's just a really, I don't know, he's a fun character to follow when you think about his body build is just so different. He can squat so much weight at Georgia Tech. I saw those videos. Presley Harvin, just don't shank the ball. Like, seriously, a 45-yard punt, I'll take it. You don't have to be a 60, 70-yard punt. Just give me like 45, 50, 55, and then when you really got to get in a hold of one, you can do it. Don't shank an effing punt. Like, that's all I want to say. Don't shank the punt. Like, my gosh, like, that's everyone. I was on the Know Your Enemy podcast. I'm sorry, it was the Curtain Call at the time, and they talked about the punters, and I went on with Michael and Jeffrey Benedict.
That was a great show.
And I told him, I said, that I just can't. It's like a golfer getting up there. You're going to get a shank every single round. You can't do that. You're not going to be a good golfer because that's going to be a huge number you're going to put up on that hole. Mm-hmm. You can't shank a punt. So I thought Presley Harvin's been doing good holding. Chris Boswell is obviously money in the bank in week 1. No issues there, but my goodness, don't shank punts. That's what I'm going to say about that. Anyways.
And with that, I think that's a great way to end that segment.
All right, let's get this up here.
Man.
Wilfredo Vasquez 11 gives us $5. He said, can you be part of the hashtag Nerds of Steel, right? Or is it Nerves of Steel?
I thought it was Nerds.
It is
Nerds of Steel. That's okay. Hashtag Bad Company and the Ride or Die Crew. I'm a podcast listener for the 2nd season, and man, it is a different now with y'all. Thanks. Welcome aboard. Even if it's your 2nd season, it's totally different from the 1st season. Like if the people that listen on our audio side, it's not the same. Bryan, I mean, go ahead and talk about some of the new shows while we have a minute.
Well, yeah, we really do, and we've grown so much. The 12 o'clock platform, the noon platform, with adding one of my favorite new shows is Jeffrey Benedict's From the Cutting Room Floor.
It's okay.
That's how you just. It's all right.
It's because he's in the live chat. That's what it is.
Okay. No, I mean, just a really good. I picture Jeffrey wearing a smoking jacket though, and a pipe when he does that show.
Is the cutting room floor?
Yeah,
I'm like, yeah.
I mean, it's like the actor's studio,
Yes.
Which I think of Will Ferrell from Saturday Night Live.
Yes, that's what I was thinking too.
Absolutely. No, really, and that's the show when we brought up and we're talking about doing. The 3 of us had a meeting here, and we were talking about that's going to be a hard one to pull off. And by goodness, he pulled it off because talking about film room on an audio show is difficult to do. But he really does a great job doing it. I'm a fantasy football nerd myself. I love it. I think I'm getting more into daily fantasy on the weekends, and the fantasy football fix, with Jeremy Betts on Wednesdays. Good show. I mean, he delves into it, but it's from a Steeler perspective. So it's definitely from a Steeler perspective too, and it's from where they're playing and who they're playing. So it's a good guide because we kind of get jaded when we play our own players in fantasy football. And I have a fantasy football note. If I would have won in 3 leagues the other day, if the Ravens would have come up and won that game, I lost by 1 or 2 points in 3 games, and I was thrilled to death that I lost. But it really this show gives you perspective. On Thursdays, it's a carryover show. It's one that we started last at the beginning of the off season with Matty Peverill. Very good show called The War Room. He breaks into rookies. He'll even talk about guys that could be potential 4th round picks of the Steelers next year. And let me tell you about this. This is the guy who was talking about Kendrick Green the week of the draft when I still hadn't. I saw his name, but I didn't know anything about him, and I knew about him before the draft because of that show. So great stuff there. On Fridays, get ready for one of the craziest, most fun shows.
It's such a funny show. I listened to last week's. It was this week. I was driving home, I think on Wednesday, and I listened to last Friday. So it was dated, but it is still. I found myself laughing out loud.
Yeah.
It's
so
terrible.
I just say that's a fun listen.
It's a good way of putting
it. I mean, and I have yet to be called out on it. Jeffrey, Jeff, and Dave, you've all been called out.
Yeah, I got called out because I called it different because I was afraid if I tried to explain what they do that people would find it not as great as what it really is.
He called you Dave Schofield.
Schofield.
Well, it was right after the Steelers got Schobert, so I kind of
Dave Schofield.
But
that was right after we said it was the Showbro show because of the Joe Schobert. That was why.
Maybe that's it. And then a show that I really enjoy a lot is our boys from Ohio, the Ohioans on Saturdays. This show debuts at noon. This is the Power Half Hour with Chris, Paul, and also Joe. These guys, great rapport. They're really I sit there and I just laugh because it's funny. And it's a different kind of funny than what Ian's talking about. Now, recently in the Power Half Hour, a little trend that they're going with right now, they're talking about basically the team and the city and 5 reasons to hate these guys. Hate the city. So they're not going to get invites to work for they're not going to be Men of the Year in the Buffalo Chamber of Commerce, and definitely not Vegas this week. But so each and every week, it's a lot of fun too. It's a little tongue in cheek when they do it. I mean, they're having fun with it, and they're laughing with the cities, not at them. Well, maybe at them, but lots of great shows. Check them out. If you're just watching YouTube for these shows, you're missing out, because we get 25 to 26 fresh original shows. And I'm not talking about part 1 and part 2. That's not in the equation. We have all these new shows. You guys say nonstop, one-stop shop. I say nonstop shop. It's always here. You could talk about any avenue of the Steelers you want, any aspect, and you're going to hear it from BTSC Radio now.
Amen. Good way to send it out into our first break. If you're watching live on YouTube or Facebook, don't go anywhere. We're not going anywhere. When we come back, we're going to talk over-under game, some news, and our predictions. Stay tuned. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to the second part of the Steelers Preview Podcast. I'm Jeff Hartman, along with Bryan Anthony Davis and Dave Schofield, and we're here to talk about some news. I want to ask you guys about the injury that Bryan brought up in part 1. Eric Ebron, hamstring, didn't practice Thursday. Dave, what do you think about Ebron, and what does this mean for the Steelers' offense this Sunday?
Well, Jeff, I'm going to say that I really wish I would have had a little bit more time, because it was an interesting question that I wanted to answer. And that was, how often did Ebron get a day off during the week last year? And it wasn't always Wednesday. That's my only saving grace to this right now, is that perhaps this was just kind of you can't give them a vet's day off if they have any kind of injury. You have to you have to report the injury if they're not practicing. So I'm hoping maybe that's it, and we'll turn around and see him full tomorrow. But if not, I think you're going to see a practice squad call up for the weekend.
What about you, Bryan? Are you concerned about this hamstring injury to Ebron that had him out of practice Thursday?
Absolutely, because he's a very important piece of the puzzle. I know everybody's down on him because of the 7 drops last year, and he had one in the preseason as well, but he makes those plays that make you forget about them as well. He's a very important part of the puzzle, and we are seeing something that we forecasted, and we saw it in the first game with the number of targets and the number of different targets that Ben Roethlisberger was able to throw to last week. That becomes so integral to the success of this offense. If Ben's going to get time, he's going to kill you one way or the other. And Eric Ebron needs to be in there to be a huge weapon. You need to kill teams with Eric Ebron, and you really can do that. Now, you do have the benefit of having a guy like Pat Friarmuth in there that can do the same type of things that Ebron does. But when they're both out there, one's covered, the other's going to mess you up.
Dave, you've talked about Ebron getting a day off, which I understand why the Steelers would just say, hamstring. Like, he tweaked his hamstring, and then he comes back limited on Friday. The only saving grace I have, and I mentioned this in our podcast, the Injury Report podcast, is going into week 1, it was Highsmith. Remember, with the groin. Was he limited on Wednesday?
Yeah, he went limited,
missed on Thursday, and then full participant Friday, and then they even lifted his questionable tag on Saturday. So that tells me that maybe there is an opportunity for Ebron to practice on Friday. And even if he's limited, he'll probably be labeled as questionable, and it might be a game time decision. Friday is going to be a big day for sure. I want to ask you guys also about Witherspoon, Ahkello Witherspoon, who did not get a helmet. We assume if you're going to make a trade, like I just talked about trades with Joe Schobert, you're going to make a trade for a player. My gosh, give him a helmet on game day, right? I mean, he's had a week. Dave, how do you see him using him, if at all?
Well, he doesn't. I don't know that he's goes above and beyond as a special teams guy. I think that was part of the reason why he was on the trading block in the first place, because if he wasn't going to be a starter, they felt like they needed more special teams stuff in Seattle That was a rumor. I don't know for sure if it was true. Because I mean, he has some special team snaps throughout his career. That might be part of it. It just, I mean, it's not like he was a Joe Hayden. You know what I'm saying? That you pick up late and you could throw in there. It's not like he's a Minkah Fitzpatrick, a guy that's a all pro player that you're throwing. It was a guy that doesn't mean that he can't do a great job for the Steelers, but not everybody can do that the same way. So I would say if he's not ready to do what the Steelers want to do, where communication and everything else is the key on this dominant defense, if he's not ready, then don't play him till he's ready. That's all I would say.
What about you, Brian? What do you think about Witherspoon?
We've seen this in the past with a few players. Last year, we saw it with a guy that came in on Halloween, and that was Avery Williamson. We saw it, believe it or not, we saw it less with Joe Hayden, like Dave mentioned. He was the one who was able to come in and adjust quickly. But we've seen these adjustments with Vance McDonald, with Ryan Switzer. We're seeing it now, a little bit of an adjustment with Joe Schobert as well. So I can understand when I saw his name on the 53, but not getting a hat on Sunday, I wasn't surprised at all. And the reason I wasn't surprised was just for a lot of what Dave said with the special teams thing, but also with just the fact that, gosh, he showed up after the last preseason game with not a lot of time to adapt and get in there. So I'm thinking that you'll probably start seeing him being mixed in more, but if you're looking for an immediate return from a guy like Ahkello Witherspoon, you're not going to get it.
Dave, you want to add something?
I want to ask you guys a question.
Sure.
If he's active this week, whose helmet does he take?
Justin Lane.
Is it Justin Lane? I mean, they had.
No, it's not Pierre. Pierre was going outside when.
Is it Mollett? I mean, he played 13 snaps, but Justin Lane.
I didn't think about Mollett. That's not a bad one. Brian, what do you think?
I would say Justin Lane because Mollett showed up and was there. And did he do anything amazing? No, but he was around the ball. He was complete non-factor with Justin Lane to me.
Did Lane have special team snaps, Dave?
Yes, he had 15 special team snaps. So and for those of you paying attention or care about these things, like we said, take it with a grain of salt. He was the second highest graded special teamer for the Steelers, according to PFF. The first one by far was Miles Killebrew, but actually he had Justin Lane graded ahead of UG3.
Old Lustin Jane, miss that guy.
Yeah, he had 15 special team snaps.
He won't return my DMs anymore. Anyways. All right, last question for you guys before we go into some over-under here. You all shocked that Karl Joseph's still on the practice squad? Brian, I'm going to let you answer this one first.
No. I thought actually a little bit surprised, but then when I saw the effort and I saw what was brought out in that game with that game plan the other day, they've been game planning this defensive backfield and the way they played the Bills for a long time. Because when I use this phrase all the time, I talk about pieces of the puzzle, and that was a complete unit the other day. And just like I was just talking about Mr. Witherspoon, it's the same thing with Karl Joseph. He just showed up, and these guys were a part of the game plan for a while, and he needs time to get a spot and mix in.
Yeah. Well, our boy Jerry Dulac, Jerry Bear, he was the one that said that the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, they were going to activate him right away. Clearly, that didn't happen. There goes the Steelers insider at it again. Dave, what do you think about Karl Joseph?
I'm going to ask a very similar question.
Whose
spot on the 53 is he going to take?
Minkah Fitzpatrick.
Sorry. If you're going by PFF grades, I
if I were going to pick someone, to be completely honest, it would be Marcus Allen. but I'm not sure because I'm trying to think how they if they utilized Marcus Allen outside of special teams in week 1.
Marcus Allen did not play on defense. The Steelers only played 2 inside linebackers, Schobert and Bush. That was it. And they have 6 on the team, dressed 5, and it was Spillane that didn't, and only played 2.
That's who I would take.
Yeah.
I'd go Marcus Allen. I don't feel like he brings a lot to the team outside of special teams. I don't know if Carl Joseph is willing to do that. Nonetheless, Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, I could agree with you on that. I think that's the way this team is coming together. That's a guy that you can go ahead and bring in.
Okay.
And just so you know, Marcus Allen had the second most special team snaps for the Steelers, tied with UG3 and Miles Killebrew. The only one who had more was Derek Watt, had one more. So he did play special teams, but didn't get on the field at all for the defense.
All right. Okay, so that's it for the news. I did that a little different, waited till part 2 to do that. Just to get right into the topic at hand. All right, let's do some over-under. Y'all ready?
Yes.
All right. Ben Roethlisberger touchdowns. The line is 2.5. Dave, over-under.
I'm thinking of my game score and then working from there. 2.5.
That's it.
Under.
What, do you have a number in mind or?
Less than 2.5.
No, thanks, Dave. Okay, Brian, what about you? 2.5.
I'm going to go with 3.
Okay, over. So you're taking the over. I'm going to go with under at 2. And that wouldn't be a bad day. I mean, that's not like a damning statement or anything. All right, here's another one. This is very Najee centric now. Najee Harris rushing yards over under 75. What do you think, Dave?
This is the week he goes over. Yeah, over 75 rushing yards. I think so.
Okay. Bryan Anthony Davis, do you agree or disagree?
I'm going to see Dave's. This is the week he goes over for 75 or so. And I'm going to say this is the week his name's in lights. He's the rookie of the week this week. And he goes over 100 yards rushing.
I'm going to go under at 70. I think he has a better game, but I think he goes under at 70. Okay, next, Najee Harris total yards, 105. So if you're having him a big day on the ground, then you think that clearly he would be over. But Dave, what do you say?
105. I think he goes over that.
Okay.
Because I think they'll connect more on some of those short passes.
Okay, good. Bryan Anthony Davis.
I guarantee you that they were working on that in practice like crazy. I guarantee you that there was a one-on-one with he and Ben working together. Mike Sullivan's in the mix there too, and they're having conversations. I'm going to say, yeah, he definitely over. I mean, I'm thinking he's going to take a pass for 40.
I laugh. I'm going to go over. I laugh because somewhere there's a Yinzer listening to this podcast or any podcast that mentions Mike Sullivan and doesn't realize that it's a quarterback's coach. And doesn't he coach the Penguins there? I mean, that's probably what he is thinking. Like, well, they got the Penguins coach going over there. What's he doing? What's he doing?
That bad's a gag off. He knows nothing.
I'll tell you what.
He just needs to have him shoot the puck.
Shoot the puck on the power play, coach. Okay, anyways, this is a unique one. Najee Harris plays off. So he played 100% of the snaps last week. So I put a line out there for how many snaps he gets off. So you have to think about total numbers of plays. The line is set at 7.5 plays off. So I'm not predicting him to play 100% of the snaps in week 2. Dave, over or under?
I thought of a number as you were asking the question, and that number happens to be under. I have him getting 5 plays off.
Okay, Brian?
I'm going to go with the over on that one. I think they're going to mix in a Kalen Ballage, and they're going to mix in some other guys. This is going to be a very different game plan this week.
I'm going to go under. I think it's going to be like 3. I seriously think
just so 3. They can say he didn't play every snap.
So Mike Tomlin doesn't have to answer questions about it. They'll take him off for one play and then put him back out there. All right. Steelers sacks of Derek Carr, 3.5 over under. Dave?
I'm going to go over on this one. I'm going to go that it's at least 4. Okay. And I would not be shocked if it's 7.
Yeah, I can see it. Brian, what do you think? 3.5.
I am going to say over, and I hope it's 17 because I would like to take his face and rub it into the Heinz Field turf and have black and gold all over it. When you desecrate the Immaculate Reception and the memory of that great play,
What happened? Did I miss something?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
What happened? Okay, go ahead and explain yourself.
So Derek Carr was asked about the rivalry and the history
from his brother David.
yeah. He was asked about the rivalry and the history of the Steelers and Raiders, and he goes, "Yeah, that ball hit the ground."
Oh, did he now?
Yep. So he's just made the list. I thought he was.
I didn't think the question was as much did the ball hit the ground as he wasn't allowed to touch it if Frenchie hit it first.
Yes, but that makes it even worse.
Which is a dumb rule in the first place.
The ball doesn't hit the ground. You know it doesn't hit the ground.
Yeah, this guy is just he's trolling, and I thought he was a smug wang when Antonio Brown went over, when Ben Roethlisberger never invited me to his house, and then he's inviting Antonio Brown the first day to his house, showing up. Hey, Antonio, come on in. It's like, murder this guy on the football field. Oh, football murder, not actual kill, because that's bad. We don't do that. But just hurt this guy just in his brain. Make him shudder. Make him pee himself just a little bit.
Yeah.
Jeez. Oh my gosh.
I couldn't help that.
All right, so let's go to the next one. TJ Watt sacks, 2.5. Dave, over under.
Push.
Oh God. Okay. Brian.
I can do it for sacks.
You can. Yes, you can. You can.
Because that was actually the number I had in my head.
So, honey, what do you want for dinner tonight? I don't care. Yeah, push.
Whatever
push.
I fix.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brian. 2.5 for TJ.
I'm going to say under.
Okay.
So I could see him getting 1 or 1.5, but he's not going to get double digits every single week.
Double digits.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry, double sack. I mean, more than one.
Oh gosh, that's what I. Yeah, I got you.
I knew what you meant. I meant.
I knew what you meant.
Touchdown zone. All right.
Touchdown zone. TJ Watt, double-digit sacks. Not every week. Not every week, but you can count on it.
He is on pace for 34 sacks this season. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to go with the under with 2. Takeaways by the Steelers defense. The line is set at 2 even. Dave, what do you think?
I'm actually going to go over.
Okay.
Just because I think they're going to need them. I think they're going to need them, and they're going to come up with them.
All right, Brian?
I think the Raiders can be sloppy if you force it, and I think the pass rush could help force some interceptions here. So I'm going to go ahead and say push, but I'm going to say I think they get right around 2. I wouldn't be surprised if they go over.
I'm going to go under with 1 again for the second straight week. And the last one, Steelers turnovers turning. We're going to set the line at 1.5. Dave, 1.5.
1.5
under. Yeah.
I'm going. See, this is the big thing, because I think this is the key number for the Steelers to have success for the season. It's not about how many takeaways they get on defense. It's about not turning the ball over on offense. They need to keep their turnovers down. And you said it at 1.5?
Correct.
I'm going to say under, because I'm afraid if it's over, we're all going to be pretty upset when it comes to the post-game show.
Brian?
I'm actually going to say under as well. If we're going to go 1.5, and because how many did they have last week? 0. I know they almost had a couple. I mean, PFF thinks they had one, but that interception that isn't going to go on the football card, but it's gonna hurt his grade there. I think that this team is a team that's been working on holding onto the ball, and I could honestly say that I'm not going to say that they're gonna get away with 0, but it was nice to see them have the 0, because was the record still going on for them? I mean, the consecutive turnover streak, wasn't that at like 22 at the end of last season, if I'm not mistaken? Because they didn't snap that. They kept on having turnovers, so that streak ended after like 22, 23
Wait
straight
a second,
games.
that's right. Was that all the way up till the end of the regular season?
Yeah. And that they had turnovers in the postseason, definitely.
Well, but if we don't count the postseason, did they turn over in week 17? Did Mason Rudolph?
They turned over. They had 1 interception at least in that Mason Rudolph game. Dave?
Oh my gosh, I can't believe we didn't report this.
No, the Steelers had 4 games. They didn't have a turnover against the Colts. They didn't have a turnover against the Colts. They didn't have a turnover
streak
against the Bengals.
End.
They didn't have a turnover against the Cowboys. They didn't have a turnover against the
Browns. They had a
Browns.
turnover against the Bengals?
No, the first time they played the Bengals.
Oh, really? Okay, then
Yeah. They had
Seattle does have
5 games. The Texans actually ended that. They had 5 games last year where they didn't turn it over.
Okay, I thought they had a lot of.
I thought there was a long streak as well, Brian, but okay, I get it. Okay, so I'm going to go with under. I don't think they turn it over at all. I think they protect the ball at home. And that's it for the over-under games. We have trivia tonight, Dave.
I do have some trivia.
Brian, do you, just so we know?
What's that?
Do you have trivia, Brian?
Oh, no, I do not. Well,
Okay.
I do have one. It's who is not going to be invited to my birthday party this year.
Well, that was me last year, so
that was the year before.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You were invited to.
No, I wasn't. But that's
not to come to
your wife lied to you.
So, anyhow, yeah, it is. Who is Dave Schofield? Go ahead.
Dave,
okay. All right. Here's the big question. The question was, well, of course, I know that both of you guys are both nerds of steel, so you've already checked out the Steelers Stat Geek podcast, so you know some of these things that I'm going to be discussing, and that is that I even brought it up on the post-game show, so I can't totally say that. This was the 19th game for the Steelers since 1978 when they've been tracking this. This is all according to Pro Football Reference, where the Steelers were underdogs by at least 6.5 points, and they won the game. So that's happened 19 times, including the playoffs. I even went and said how the last time was the Charlie Batch game in 2012 against the Ravens. The time before that was the divisional playoff game in Indianapolis in the 2005 season, where they were underdogs by that much. My question is, so that's going to tell you we're turning back the clock a little bit. When's the last time the Steelers were this big of an underdog and won the game in week 1? When was the last time they were a bigger underdog than what they were to the Bills and won the game in week 1 of the season? If you have any idea of that one, and I'm thinking Brian's just going to get ready to just spout it off.
I actually know. Could I have a decade?
It's between 2005. It's between 1978 and 2005.
Let's go 1987 against the 49ers.
1987 against the 49ers. 1987 against the 49ers is not on this list, so they must not have been an underdog by that much.
Okay.
So, but that's not a bad guess. I will tell you, it's since then.
Okay.
I was a freshman in high school. It was on the road. Jeff probably has nothing.
I got it.
No,
I got it.
No, I got nothing.
And the team,
it.
And the current team no longer plays.
You don't have to give me. I've got it.
Yeah.
Don't taint it because I've got it.
Okay.
This is Tony Defio and I. One of our favorite games. We've done this on the Retro Show. 1992. Bill Cowher's first game against the Houston Oilers in the House of Pain.
Yes, that's the 29-24 victory over the Oilers. Do you have any idea how much of an underdog they were in that game? What the spread was according to PFR?
I think it was like 10.5.
It's actually the game that they have won with the biggest spread against them. It was 12.5, according to PFR.
And what year is this?
This was 1992.
92.
That was back when they opened the season on Labor Day weekend.
Yep.
Yeah, because it was the Sunday of Labor Day weekend.
I can tell you where I was sitting.
There you go. All right.
I was going to say, how old was Sapphire?
All right, let's go with some predictions now. I want to bring back something that we used to do, and I forgot about it last week, and that was a bold prediction. Trying to predict something that was like a bold prediction. But we're just going to tie this in with our prediction. So we're going to go to every individual on the show. What's your prediction? What's your score? How do you see it playing out? And then also, what's your bold prediction? All right, so let's go with Brian first. Brian, how do you see this game shaking out?
I see the Steelers winning it. I see it a lot closer than a lot of people think. I am going to go with 27-23 in favor of the Steelers, and my bold prediction is Patty Friarmuth, 2 touchdowns.
So what was your score again? I missed that.
I'm going to go with 27-23.
Okay, very nice. Dave, what's your prediction?
My prediction is, at least how I feel now until the Steelers prove me otherwise, that the Steelers are better off in low-scoring affairs because they are a defense-first team. If you're talking about scores pushing the 30s, that is where the Steelers are going to make their fan base a little bit more nervous as whether or not they can pull off games. So therefore, I'm picking the Steelers. I'm going in a much lower scoring affair. I am going, and I'm picking them to cover because I'm going with same point total as last week. I'm going 23-13. And my bold prediction is the Steelers will have a turnover, but it's not going to burn them as much because at some point in this game, you're going to have turnovers on back-to-back drives, meaning one team's going to turn it over and the other team's going to turn it over right back.
Okay. I see this as being a closer game as well. We talked about that at the opening of the show. I see the Steelers winning it, shocker, 27-20. And I think that it's a game where I think Najee Harris gets his first touchdown. It's not running. I think he's going to do it receiving. So he'll hit pay dirt for the first time. So 27-20 is the final score, close to Bryan. So we'll see who Price is Right rules closest without going over. So we'll see how that goes. My bold prediction is that, geez.
Okay.
I'm
Jeff, while you're thinking of it, we didn't
ahead.
say this before we made our picks, is we didn't say what the current line was.
Well, it was 5.5. Did it change?
It was 5. It's actually the consensus, according to Oddshark, has moved to 6 in favor of the Steelers. I think it's because of the massive injury report for the Raiders that's got like 27 names on it. And the over-under is 47, just so you know.
Right, so I would have a push on the over-under with my score, 27-20.
Yes.
I think Big Press has himself a day. I think he has 3 punts inside the 10. There you go. My bold prediction. 3, because he's
3 inside the 10, 1 inside the 5.
Yep. There you go. There you go. All right. We're not doing final thoughts tonight. We're going to talk about Norm Mcdonald a little bit. Norm Mcdonald passed away. I loved him as.
I'm just thinking.
I can't say Burt Reynolds on Celebrity Jeopardy or Turd Ferguson, as he had to be called when he wore his hat. I mean, but I also loved him in Billy Madison. Like, people forget that he was a character in Billy Madison. Just so funny. Real quick, Bryan, favorite Norm Macdonald movie and or sketch on SNL? Actually,
I'm going to go a little crazy here on you and talk about the Norm Show that came out around 1999, 2000 on ABC. And it was Norm. It was the woman from Roseanne, who's on Big Bang Theory. My gosh, why am I Metcalf? Laurie Metcalf.
Yes,
she was in it. Sheldon's mom, and it was a wiener dog. It was a dachshund, and Norm Macdonald talking to a dachshund, and the dachshund would. And I have dachshunds. I have a bunch of dachshunds in my house, and they're funny animals. But Norm interacting with a dachshund, with that really snide humor, it was just golden. I'm gonna look for it on YouTube, but I'm a big fan of Weekend Update, and Norm Macdonald on Weekend Update was one of my all-time favorites. And he was fired from Saturday Night Live because he would not lay off OJ, because OJ was good friends with Dick Ebersol, and that's one of the reasons that they got rid of him, because he was not giving OJ a pass. He could be doing a completely different news story, then he just throw in an OJ did it. I mean, he would just do stuff with that. Just a funny guy. I was watching tonight before the show, and I didn't know we were going to talk about this, but I was watching the Bob Saget Celebrity Roast, and his jokes were intentionally bad, and they were killing everybody on stage. The audience wasn't laughing, but Bob Saget, John Stamos, all these guys on stage, all these comedians were laughing like crazy because it was all deadpan. It was a great delivery, and they were just really absurd jokes, but it was just complete Norm. And I love that kind of humor. Man, here's one more thing about Norm that I just think is amazing. He had cancer for about 10 years and did not tell anybody. He did not want anybody to know in the media. He didn't want anybody to treat him any differently. He kept that completely quiet. And that's just that to me is a man of integrity too. I just he didn't want that to take over. He just wanted to be Norm. And so God bless him. May he rest in peace. Gone at 61.
Dave, favorite Norm Mcdonald movie / sketch?
Oh, you just say his name and I just start laughing. Some people did not like him doing the Weekend Update. I'm glad Brian brought that up because that's what I was going to bring up first. Yeah. I loved him for Weekend Update. It was just wasn't he the Germans love David Hasselhoff? I don't know if he kept doing that one too. Germans love David Hasselhoff. But his delivery and everything, you have to love the Jeopardy skit. But there was another one I watched recently. It was actually where he was on. It was when it was late night when it was Conan, and he was on there, and it was the one girl, I can't even remember her name. She was like from Melrose Place or something like that. She was the guest. He had been on and was in earlier, and he kept chiming in because they were talking about that she was coming in a movie coming out that had Carrot Top. And he just kept busting on it. He's like, I know what it's called. Box office poison.
I remember that.
And then they kept going and said, and they're like, oh, but it still doesn't have a name. And she said, like, no, it's something like chairman of the board or something like that. He's like, only if it's spelled BORED, and they just were rolling because he couldn't not comment to kind of like with the OJ thing that he just had to, and that dry delivery. Oh man, he was such a funny guy. Great in the movies, great in the skits, and R.I.P. there, Norm. It was sad to see you go.
It's that one sketch, Celebrity Jeopardy, which I could literally watch it over and over again and laugh out loud when he's obviously Burt Reynolds, and then he's Turd Ferguson, and he says, I'll take the condoms, which is condiments. And then he goes, I'll take ape tit. He goes, it's a 15 days you did. Let's just do animal sounds. This is a sound a dog makes.
No, who was even playing Sean Connery? Right. Because he had some great one-liners.
Daryl Hammond.
Yeah. Like your mother likes.
That's moo. That's the sound your mother made last night, Trebek.
And when Trebek showed up on the show, it was
awesome.
We're
rough.
Yeah. I'll take condoms for 200. You mean condiments? This condiment is made from mustard seeds.
With onions.
Yeah. All right. So rest in peace, Norm Mcdonald. He was a really funny dude. So Dave, why don't you send us out?
Hey.
All right. We'll see you next week for another Steelers preview. Have a good week, everyone. Go Steelers.